Good evening, everybody. We're delighted to welcome you to this evening's Cannabis Workforce Development Panel. It's the first time that the Cannabis Hub and Lehman College have jointly sponsored an event, and I want to begin by introducing my colleague, Patrice Edwards, who's the director of the Bronx Cannabis Hub. Over to you, Patrice.
Hello, everyone, and I want to know that we still have a couple of folks who are trickling into the room. Thankfully, we are going to record this. This is going to be something that is available for folks to rewatch in the future and to be able to share, and we'll make sure that you guys have this recording. Again, my name is Patrice Edwards. I am the director of the Bronx Cannabis Hub at the Bronx Defenders. I'll share a little bit more about our work when we get into intros led by our moderator, Tanya. But for now, I will kick it back to Jane to continue with our introduction.
Terrific. So I'm Jane MacKillop. I'm the Dean of the School of Continuing and Professional Studies at Lehman College. And although we're in a virtual space, we're also located at the Bronx Business Tech Incubator, which is located at CUNY on the Concourse, Lehman College's offsite location for the School of Continuing and Professional Studies. Lehman is the only four-year public college in the Bronx and is ranked as having the fourth highest mobility rate in the nation. So we act as a catalyst for economic and social mobility for our students. Lehman provides undergraduate and graduate studies in the liberal arts and sciences and preparation for over 30 professional certificates within a dynamic research environment. Lehman serves about 25,000 students per year, half in degree programs and the same number in certificate courses and business services. Lehman College has been involved in the cannabis sector for over a year, as the Office of Cannabis Management has rolled out the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. Our involvement is totally supported by our president and provost and is part of the college's commitment to social justice and reparation for justice-involved entrepreneurs. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome the Deputy Borough President, Janet Peguero.
You know, I was muted, and if you're not muted more than 3 times during a Zoom call, it hasn't been a successful one. So there's that. Thank you so much. First and foremost, I want to thank Dean Jean and Samira for the invitation to help open up this very important panel conversation. I am in awe with all things Lehman College and the School of Continuing Studies. What you all do for the Bronx community and beyond in terms of economic mobility is truly transformative and really a model for other continuing studies institutions to follow. So thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting me and hosting this conversation. As the Dean mentioned, my name is Janet Peguero, and I have the honor of serving as the Deputy Bronx Borough President under the leadership of our Bronx Borough President, Vanessa L. Gibson. And so, you know, I'm just so excited to be a part of this conversation. I want to start off by expressing my gratitude to the Cannabis Workforce Initiative, the New York CAURD Coalition, and the Borough of Manhattan Community College for taking on the part of this discussion tonight. Your contributions to this event is invaluable, and we appreciate the insights that you will share with us this evening. Again, I just want to extend a huge thank you to the Bronx Cannabis Hub. The Bronx Borough President, in partnership with the Bronx Community Foundation, has seen the initiative grow from start to what it is today. And we're just so honored to continue this work together in ensuring equity and making sure that the social equity, the social justice component of the legalization of cannabis is not just a talking point, it's not just something that sounds amazing, that is actionable items, right? That there's legislation that fully align in the support of this mission of social equity, and that communities that are still healing from the criminalization of cannabis really have a fair chance, not an equal chance, an equitable chance to partake in this industry. So I want to commend the amazing work that the Bronx Cannabis Hub has been doing through and through. This is just the beginning, and I'm just so excited to see what you all have in store for the future. Again, Lehman College and the School of Continuing and Professional Studies CUNY on the concourse. You guys are amazing. You continue to be amazing. And so having this panel discussion tonight just really speaks to your mission and vision of equity. Your commitment to promoting entrepreneurship in the cannabis industry is truly commendable. And we're grateful for the support that you're providing, again, Bronx sites and beyond. You know, what we're seeing is that there have been 66 so far at CAURD approvals in the entire state, and out of the 66, and folks will correct me on this data, but out of the 66 that have been approved, only 4 have managed to open businesses in the city of New York, with 0 in the Bronx. And so we need to speak on that, and we need to address that issue. I know that there are conversations. We've been in conversations with OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, to ensure that when a dispensary comes to the Bronx, we are educating folks, and again, that it's equitable, and that the return on investment is going back to our entrepreneurs. And so we are learning that we cannot assume that if you legalize it, they will come. We need to prepare our entrepreneurs for this new industry, this new booming industry. There is so much to it, from the administrative side to, again, the marketing side of things. And so I hope that this conversation tonight really defines what this industry truly is and the opportunity. We know that through education, there's preparation. And so I'm just so delighted to be a part of this. The Bronx Borough President's Office is devoted to the education and the entrepreneurship development of our Bronx residents, and ensuring that we take up space in this industry that for so long has impacted our communities, our families, and our neighborhoods. And so it's time to buy back the block, is what I like to say. But thank you so much to all the panelists that are going to be a part of this conversation. We look forward to working with each and every one of you in ensuring, again, that social equity in this industry is not just a talking point or something that sounds good to say, but that there are actual actionable items for our community. So thank you so much for having us.
Oh, Janet, your words are just fabulous. You are really inspirational, and I appreciate you coming so much. And we know that you support all that is being done in this area. Thank you so much. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator, Tanya Osbourne, who's going to introduce the panel. She's going to tell you first a bit about herself, and then introduce the panel members, answer some questions, and then be open to questions from the floor, from you, our audience. So Tanya, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're thrilled to have you as a moderator.
Hi, Jane. Thank you so much for having me. It is my honor to be here. I am a lifelong Bronx resident, so anything I could do to serve the community, I am all for it. As Jane said, my name is Tanya Osbourne. I have 2 hats in this cannabis space. I work for Women Grow, which is the oldest and largest professional networking organization for women entrepreneurs in the cannabis industry. I've worked with the organization since 2016. I started as a market leader, and now my role is basically doing exactly this, forming partnerships with community initiatives to lead with education. Our role at Women Grow is to really connect, educate, and empower the current and future generations of women entrepreneurs. My second hat is I am the founder of the Cannadiva. We are a currently online community of women, which has a little bit more of an intersectional positioning, in that we don't always we are not just a community of entrepreneurs. We are a community of medical patients, caregivers, women who just love the plant and want to know more about it, entrepreneurs, advocates, and so forth. So it's been my honor to be in this space professionally for 8 years. So I'm really excited for what's to come. I'm happy to serve in this role because I sit on the advisory board for the CUNY Cannabis Initiative. I'm thrilled to be able to do that. Again, aligning with Go Bronx. I know that this is the first of many conversations to come. This particular conversation is going to be about cannabis workforce. And there are going to be so many conversations to come. I'm going to chat with Jane this week about some great things that we have planned. So right now, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today, and then we're going to jump right into our conversation. Our first panelist is Ms. Donna McClean-Grant, who serves as the Director of Programs and Special Initiatives for BMCC. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Tanya. I am Dr. Donna McClean-Grant. I am, as Tanya indicated, the Director for Programs and Special Initiatives at BMCC, Continuing Education and Workforce Development. We at BMCC have the pleasure of being in partnership with Lehman College as we offer CUNY's cannabis workforce training and business development programs. BMCC's partnership and our part in this initiative is free training programs. And we will be offering three service areas in the cannabis space. It will be advanced security, advanced dispensary technicians, and manufacturing technicians. And it'll be a robust workforce development curriculum, 56 contact hours for security, and 80 hours for both dispensary and manufacturing training tracks. We'll be offering cannabis career exploration, just to name some of the content, product knowledge, and various specialized skill competencies, and the New York State compliance regulations, safety health, CPR certifications, and we are very much in support of career success. So we'll be offering a module that consists of micro-credentials and soft skills and conflict resolution, self-branding, and a host of different areas that are in aligned with other sectors as it relates to career readiness, career mapping, as well as job placement assistance. So we're looking forward to launching our programs in the later part of spring. And I'm happy to be here amongst all the subject experts of cannabis. My area is workforce development for over 20 years, and I'll be hiring a staff of very well-skilled, competency individuals who are ingrained in cannabis so that we can guide them as it relates to workforce framework. Pleasure being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Our next panelist is again Patrice Edwards from Bronx Cannabis Hub. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Patrice, and I'm the director of the Bronx Cannabis Hub. We are a project of the Bronx Defenders, and just building on the over 25 years of amazing experience that the Bronx Defenders has in providing direct legal services to folks in the Bronx over a large breadth of issues, including criminal justice, around criminal justice reform and related marijuana offenses, but also things along the lines of family law and immigration law, and being able to see on so many different levels in so many different ways how Black and Brown immigrant low-income communities are impacted by these systems. The Bronx Defenders felt that we were particularly positioned to launch this project and do it in a way that is rooted in what has been happening in these communities for generations, and also do it in a way that allows us to serve those who are directly impacted. The crux of our work is in providing pro bono legal services to folks who are looking to enter into the industry. That also includes providing, covering initial costs to submit applications. We want to ensure that with this, let me not be corny by saying budding cannabis industry, but with this emerging cannabis industry, it is so important that we actually allow opportunities to be opportunities and not actual barriers to access, and especially from the gate. And then in terms of what the work looks like for the hub in supporting workforce development is initiatives like this and partnerships like this with all of you in the room who bring so much expertise and wealth. We want to make sure that we're leading with education and resources, especially for those in the Bronx. That is a focus and a priority for us. When we talk about education, we want to make sure that the folks who have been the most harmed by over-policing actually have what they need, as Janet said, to enter into this industry. And I appreciate all of you and being able to be here for this event.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Our next panelist is Jeremy Rivera. He is the co-founder of the New York CAURD Coalition.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you to the distinguished panel guests. My name is Jeremy Rivera. I am a New York State CAURD applicant. My partner and I are both justice involved. We are the owners of Kush Culture Industries and Gourmet Buds. I'm a returning citizen. I was released from prison in 2018. I spent a little over half a decade in prison for nonviolent drug-related crimes, some relating to cannabis. I'm also the owner of J&A Building Consultants, which is a New York City-based construction safety corporation where I teach OSHA, New York City Department of Building Safety licensing training. I'm a construction health and safety technician certified through the Board of Certified Safety Professionals. And of course, the co-founder of the New York CAURD Coalition, which is an organization of a little over 100 members, all CAURD applicants, 23 which are licensed. We provide resources to all of our members from ancillary businesses that are already embedded in the cannabis industry. We vet and try to prevent predatory and parasitic companies that are going to take advantage of people from disenfranchised communities that are getting into the industry, especially through the CAURD program. So we have strategic partnerships with POS systems and banking, any ancillary businesses that's in cannabis.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much. And last but not least, Esta. Esta's title is the co-chair of the Cannabis Workforce Initiative and Director of Labor and Employment Program at Cornell School of Industrial and Labor Relations. That is a mouthful. Thank you so much for being here, Esta. Please say hi and tell us a little bit more about your work.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to be on the panel tonight. So a little bit more about what we do and who we are. The New York State School of Industrial and Labor Relations was founded by the New York State Legislature after World War II because it believed we needed a school that focused on the workplace and on workers. And so we are not a business school. Business schools focus on the bottom line. We focus on the human side of the workplace. And there I am the director, as you said, Tanya, of the Labor and Employment Law Program. Before I became, quote, an academic, I was a practicing labor and employment lawyer. I represented workers, I represented unions, and I represented people who believed they were discriminated against under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We came together, the ILR school came together with the Workforce Development Institute, which is a statewide program, just obviously like this ILR school is, to really do workforce development and labor and employment law education, because we saw those as twofold things that needed to be done to make sure that, as we all believe that the MRTA is a social justice piece of legislation, to make that promise a reality. We have been funded by the New York State Legislature to do our work, and so we have done a few things. We have put together a 10-session program, which really introduces people who are interested in a career in cannabis, whether as an employer, licensee, or as a worker, everything from understanding the plant to what do you need to know if you're a worker in this new world where it is a recreational drug. I am not interested in people going from mass incarceration to mass discharge because of using the drug. You cannot use it at the workplace. Two, what does an employer need to know to be successful? This 10 weeks, and I'm proud to say that we're going to be starting our 10 weeks in collaboration with Lehman at CUNY on the concourse. And Jane, I'll be coming up to teach, and I'll be coming home because I was born and brought up in the Bronx, and I graduated from Evander Childs High School, so I'm coming home. So we have that program. We're going to be graduating our first group of certificate holders in 2 weeks. Next week, I'm teaching about how to understand discrimination and stop a hostile work environment or sexual harassment. In addition, we then can take each of our pieces as modules and work with schools that are interested in sort of bringing in whatever they need in terms of our 10 weeks. And we're also working with community groups to train the trainer, because we can't do it all. And it's really important that everybody have this knowledge, that old adage, if you give a person a fish, they only eat for one night. If you give them a fishing pole and teach them how to fish, then they can move forward. And so that's really what we're trying to do with CWI.
Thank you so much, Esther. I appreciate that. That was great. And I have so many of our community that are in the process of that course.
Yes.
It is so wonderful. And I know that it's going to be issued again. There's going to be regional. So please follow CWI to find out about that course. It is a really wonderful program. I also wanted to give some love to our fellow CUNYs back there. You're probably like, who are those other folks back there? I wanted to say thank you to Martha and Samira and Alex, who's behind the scenes, making sure that this all works, because we don't do it. So thank you everyone from CUNY for being here. So we're going to jump right in. So we're talking about workforce development. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't had these conversations about workforce development until reaching this point in my cannabis career. I worked in other industries, and that was never our conversation. So for those that are out here who may not know what workforce development is and how it applies to cannabis, I'd like to kind of start there. Is that good? All right. So let's start with, I'm going to start with Esta, so you can kind of continue the conversation about what workforce development means in cannabis.
Well, first we have to make clear that the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 is alive and well, which basically says that it is a felony to use, manufacture, or distribute cannabis writ large. That means, for example, that in cannabis, because apprenticeship is a federally funded program, that we cannot have what would be the best possible workforce development program, and that would be an apprenticeship program, a jointly sponsored program with labor and management, or just management. I also sit as chair of the New York State Apprenticeship Council. And one of the things I've learned is that people don't know what jobs there are available. So for me, workforce development first is making clear to people what are the jobs that are available, what are the skills that you need to have to do those jobs. Because with all due respect to everybody thinks cannabis is a very romantic industry. It's an industry that takes hard work. It's an industry which takes skill, takes intelligence. And so the first piece, and that's what we're trying to do with our 10-week program, is make clear what all the jobs are so that people can figure out what they want to pursue. If they want to go to BMCC and they want to do security, they know that security is an important part of workforce development. So that's the first piece that I think is important. The second piece is this really puts a tremendous burden on employers, because since there is no apprenticeship program, employers are going to have to do a fair amount of training. So pre-apprenticeship training is a kind of bedrock to help people understand what the jobs are, and then they can figure out what program they want to go to at Lehman or at BMCC or other schools where those programs are being held. You have to have related instruction. People need to understand the plant, because that's important. And they also need to understand that this is a highly regulated industry, and that to know the regulations, how they can come and bite you in the back if you don't do them well. Everything is going to be on a computer, which means computer skills. People are talking about cultivation and getting in the dirt, but in fact, everything is tagged with a number. And so that means computer skills are an important piece as well. Occupational safety and health, I heard Jeremy talk about that. That's an important piece. All of these are pieces of the puzzle that have to be put together, and there's no one place where you can get it all. So it seems to me the first place to think about is to make sure people know what the jobs are, know what the requirements are, and then figure out where they can pick up the skills they need.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Since you mentioned Jeremy, I'm going to pivot to Jeremy. In your view, what is workforce development in cannabis? What do we need to build that
First and foremost, backing on what Esta said, you know, cannabis is still a Schedule I drug, so it limits a lot of the funding that institutions can get to prescribe programs that are going to give men and women that come from our neighborhoods an ability to get into the industry. So that's what, as the New York CAURD Coalition, we independently try to provide as many services as we can through businesses that have already been established throughout the country. New York is very in its infancy stages when it comes to cannabis, but there are companies and there are people who have been in this industry in other states for longer periods of time, and we need to be able to utilize those resources and have them push us through what we're learning now that's new in New York cannabis. So the outreach, first and foremost, is getting out to the streets and letting people know that there are programs that are out there, like in Lehman, that they can go to and make sure they're applied. But also remembering that we can't allow bureaucracy to hold the door. I had mentioned I'm a returning citizen. I have a cannabis conviction, so it's a drug charge. I can't get a Sally Mae loan, or I can't get a private loan to go to college. So we need to also understand the people in the demographic of who are tending to herd towards this industry and making sure we're equitable to them too. So there's a lot that needs to be looked at, again, from seed to sale. There are a lot of industries in cannabis, not only a dispensary and not only cultivation. Remember, delivering, marketing, testing, and laboratory results. So we want to make sure that we're incorporating all that into whatever curriculums and programs that we're creating. And that's it, you know.
Thank you. That was perfect. Thank you. Patrice, from your vantage, what may be a little different? How do you see workforce development in this industry?
Workforce development, and especially thinking about the folks that we've been able to support through the CAURD program. We have 30 folks. We have 6 folks who've been given provisional licenses so far. That includes Roland Connor with Smacked LLC in downtown Manhattan. And I think across the board, when you talk about workforce development from an employer standpoint, I do think that it requires, it still requires education and being able to have access to these programs, even if it's not coming from the traditional employee viewpoint, because I think what ends up happening is that we also don't want to create space for folks to not get what they need to make the most informed decision as an employer, and to really make sure that they're building out their teams in a way that makes sense for the industry and also makes sense for their individual businesses. And being in the weeds of that work with our CAURD applicants, and then the few folks who have been given these provisional licenses, we're really starting to pick up on where the pain points are for folks in the process as a license holder, and starting to realize that actually even the employer can benefit from being in the same spaces, because a lot of the questions that are being asked requires you to understand workforce development in a way that I believe goes a little bit deeper than other industries. I think other industries, you can be a business owner and be a little bit removed from this. I think in all that's required for cannabis and how compliance heavy it is. I'll leave it there, but just with all the different moving pieces, as Jeremy said, like it's a lot.
What's great about this conversation, and then I'm gonna tap Donna, what's great is that there are two sides of this coin, because there are the workers, the people that are looking to come into this industry to work in this industry. And then there's the folks that are entrepreneurs that are going to be looking for trained, skilled, informed workers in their companies and organizations. So it's wonderful that we're hitting on both sides. Ms. Donna, I'd love for you to chime in on especially because you're building out these programs for workforce development within the CUNY infrastructure. What are you seeing, or what would you like cannabis as far as workforce development to look like?
Well, thank you, Tanya, for introducing that perspective and from the employee and the employer standpoint. You know, BMCC, we train over 10,000 students annually as it relates to, you know, adult literacy, continuing education, and workforce development. So we're very poised as it relates to training individuals to enter into the workforce. Now, The definition that I looked at was the ability, workforce has the ability to produce capital manpower with the specialty skill competencies and soft skills required to perform job duties associated with services dealing with the cannabis sector. So having said that, you also look at the other auxiliary services in, security, transportation, the legal counsel, marketing, accounting, technology, all these other sectors that can partner with the cannabis industry to lift it up as infrastructure. You also look at the fact that within the cannabis industry, we all will be working to help standardize the SOC codes. And that's going to be quite crucial for the cannabis industry as it looks at defining job descriptions, salary, range, wages and the likes. So, we really want to work with New York State as it relates to the Department of Labor, as it relates to really ensuring that the cannabis industry jobs are embedded within the SOC codes so that data can be collected and it can also build a shape as it relates to a recognized legitimate industry as it stands to be.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, so just going to jump right into my next question. And I also wanted to say to the folks that are watching, if you look on the bottom panel of your screen, you'll see a Q&A section. We will have time for questions and answers. So if you have any, as we go through our conversation, please put them in the Q&A section and I'll definitely be able to grab them, okay? So our next question is, what is the most urgent need for cannabis sector employees and employees in the future? And I'm gonna start there with Ms. Donna. What do you think are our most urgent needs for cannabis employees and employers in the future?
Okay, well, coming from my lens, from workforce development, I really thought about the question and I thought about it in the terms of federal legalization for the Marijuana Regulation Tax Act. Once that is federally recognized, then the capital, credit, banking is made available so that marginalized individuals can really be a part of the small business associations, being able to own their own businesses, seeing themselves as a growing entity as an entrepreneur. We're making strides in New York City, state by state, as it relates to, marijuana being a part of the economic development. But until it is federally recognized, will we really truly be able to make an impact as it relates to social economic development and seeing our communities truly benefit from individuals having their businesses, being, individuals who've been marginalized, really seeing something really happen for them in terms of, the industry being recognized, embraced as a legitimate sector and individuals making money.
It's so true because the Cannadiva is a non-plant touching event and marketing company. And I've had 2 bank accounts closed on. So that is something that we need tremendously in our industry to be recognized and be able to actually earn money. Thank you so much for that. Esta, can I ask you to chime in? What do you think is our most urgent need for employees and employers right now?
Well, I certainly, Donna, and you are both correct that we really have to have cannabis removed as a Schedule I drug under the Control Act, because without that, you can't have banks giving loans. It really makes it very difficult for the industry to really be all that I think the industry could be. And so I certainly agree that we've got to get it removed as a Schedule I drug. However, I'm not very optimistic that we're going to see that happen in the next few years. So that means that the things that I worry about are twofold. I worry on behalf of the new entrepreneurs that are getting into this industry, whether we're talking about CAURD or we're talking about MBEs, WBEs, veterans who've been hurt in one of our wars, distressed farmers, that because this is such an completely regulated industry. And why is it so regulated? It's so regulated because it's a controlled substance. So the idea that there's going to be such control, you buy a bag of seeds, that bag of seeds has a number on it. Every time you plant that seed and it grows into a plant, it has that number in it. So it is a totally regulated industry. So my first concern is that employers are going to run afoul of all of the regulations that are required of them. OCM has to have very clear regulations. There's going to be regulations about how you dispose of the plant if it's no good. And so there are many places where you can get tripped up as an employer. And so that is a major concern that I have with respect to this industry. That's one concern. My second concern is the fact that I am, as a labor and employment lawyer, worried that new employers are not going to understand all of the employment rules that they are living under. So for example, just one that was in the New York Times on Monday, Panera Bread. Probably many of you have been to Panera Bread, Dunkin' Donuts too, same issue. So they had a wage and hour issue. What was the wage and hour issue? They called a woman and many other employees who she made salads and she was at the register, but they called her an assistant manager. They didn't pay her time and a half over 40 hours. She never worked less than 50 hours. That lawsuit was a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Our cannabis entrepreneurs, I don't want them to be in that position. I want to make sure that there are no issues with wage and hour. There are no issues with sexual assault or sexual harassment. One lawsuit can put you right out of business. This is a new world with a labor peace agreement. What does that mean? That means the employer is neutral as workers choose to organize or not. That means labor relations and collective bargaining. That's a whole area that people need to know about and understand. So on the one hand, my worry is for the new entrepreneurs into the cannabis world. My husband is a retailer. He tells me, I know from personal experience, how hard it is to be that. You have to be everything. So, and similarly, I'm worried about workers coming in. I want to make sure that when they get a job, there are job ladders, there's upward mobility. People can move up, that generational wealth will happen in those communities so impacted by mass incarceration. It doesn't help them if their employer goes out of business because of one of the issues that I just spoke about. So to me, that's something I worry about. And I'm also worrying about training. Because since we can't have apprenticeship programs, which is the golden standard, I'm worried about employers being able to train the staffs that they need. And so to me, those are a few of the things that I worry about all the time and that I spend a lot of time teaching about, because it seems to me that that's part of my responsibility at the Cannabis Workforce Initiative.
That was so great. Because a lot of those things I have never, when you started talking collective bargaining agreements, I'm like, you know, because my parents had a record store when I was a kid up until I was around 12 years old. And I barely saw my father, you know, so I understand what owning a retail establishment is like. So I can't even imagine. I mean, I can imagine all of the regulations around cannabis businesses in general. Yeah. So it's, and I think people should be prepared for that, you know? So thank you for that. Who did I not? I had Jeremy. Patrice, did I hit you? I did not. What is most important right now for employers and employees in this space?
So all of the top points that I was going to say have already been said and said
Right,
so
Esther
beautifully.
hit them all.
Yes.
Esther hit everyone.
Yes, and I love it. I will echo again, we have to address obviously the scheduling, obviously the banking issue, particularly for the Safe Banking Plus Act. That's very important. There's a lot of powerful advocacy that's been happening all over the country around that work. I just want to quickly shout out Parabola Center that's doing amazing advocacy work across the country on a federal level. And also shout out Cannabis NYC and New York City Small Business Services with their founding director, Dashida Dawson, who's also doing a lot of work around answering these really tough questions and being able to support us on a citywide level. So I really want to see that Banking Act be passed, and I really want to see advocates be heard in making that even better than what's been proposed. I also want to make sure that, and as I hit this on the head, this is the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, is the responsibility on employers, particularly folks who are opening retail dispensaries, to actually do more than just hire someone, but there is this added responsibility of training up employees. This is an entire new industry, and because there are so many restrictions, and as Esta said, the folks who are well equipped to provide these apprenticeship opportunities aren't able to do that. So that responsibility falls on employers, and just in also being rooted in policy work and being able to look at the bigger picture at the hub. We want to make sure that as we build out our additional resources and education, and making sure that the folks that we support are being connected to trusted and well-respected service providers, that we're also able to have the conversation with everyone that we support with and say, hey, as you're coming into this industry, this entire thing is new, you're creating opportunities. What leadership looks like from an employee standpoint. There's a great opportunity to say, listen, like a part of workforce development is also as an employer understanding how you need to build out your business. And there's definitely a value in paying attention to that skill set as an employer, because there's so much synergy in being able to tap into all of these amazing resources like CWI and Lehman to say, okay, I am not approaching workforce development from the traditional standpoint, but because of the unique needs of the cannabis industry, it's important for me to be aware and really understand what workforce development means generally and what it means for me to build a thriving business as a business owner.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Again, I just wanted to reinforce that we do have a Q&A section. I saw somebody put a question in there, but Jane was quick and answered it already. So, so thank you for that. And then our last one, but I think this is actually a really meaty question, is how can colleges and agencies aid in this process of workforce development, especially in cannabis? I'm going to start with Esta here.
Okay. Well, first, I always come back to the Controlled Substances Act, and I apologize. But all of us who receive federal funds, National Science Foundation funds, we get federal scholarship funds for our students. In order to get monies, we have to sign a document that indicates our campuses are drug-free. That just means that we're not giving it out. It doesn't mean that we actually think the students are not imbibing. That's not what that means by drug-free. So we're in a very interesting position. We cannot do plant touching because we could run afoul of the Controlled Substances Act. So it seems to me that's a role for agencies that could really do a lot of very wonderful work in some of the plant touching. But we can teach the science of the plant, which is very important. We can teach the sociology around the plant and the culture of the plant, because there is a cannabis culture and we need to recognize it. We can teach the law around cannabis, because that is really important. because people need to understand why they can't get a bank loan. People need to understand all of those things. In addition, it seems to be, as academic institutions, our job is to prepare people for the industry. So it is indeed the workforce development we've talked about. It is also the legal and regulatory framework that we can all teach without running afoul of the Controlled Substances Act. We can also teach all of the law that is necessary to know in the employment space. We can also teach about labor relations and collective bargaining and how to do joint labor management training, joint labor management, health and safety, all of those things. But I guess to me, the way I teach my labor and employment law classes are employee and employer rights and responsibilities. So if this is going to be a truly equitable industry where workers have voice and workers are seen, and it is truly an industry where there is equality of opportunity that we talk about, but we often don't see. We know that the outside cannabis world is overwhelmingly white and male. Well, that's not the cannabis world we want in our state. So for me, those are the kinds of things that we can teach at the academy, at the university, at community colleges, and all through the world in terms of education. Those are the kinds of things that we can teach. And then we can be plugged in to a community group that needs a particular area covered. We can work with another school that maybe does the plant science really well, but doesn't have the information with respect to teaching entrepreneurship skills. So there's a lot, notwithstanding the Controlled Substances Act, and I will tell you that I live with a little bird right here, and it's called CSA, to make sure that I don't do anything that would hurt Cornell in terms of all of our federal grants and our federal contracts. But it seems to me there's a very big area that universities, colleges, community colleges can play to really give all of the information that people need. We teach plant science. We teach all of those issues. We teach the sociology. We should be teaching the history of cannabis and why marijuana is a racist term and why there is a Controlled Substances Act. There doesn't need to be one. That is an outgrowth of politics. That is not an outgrowth of everybody thought this was a terrible plant. It is all political, and I'm not going to go into it, but these are the things that we should be teaching because people need to understand why we are where we are today. And so I will stop because once I get going, I have a hard time stopping.
I love it. I'm like, ooh, I have to call you. We have to continue that chat. That was great.
Oh,
thank you.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to move to Jeremy on this. What do you think the role of universities and agencies are in this workforce development place?
Absolutely. And again, it does go back to federal restrictions. And I think institutions and colleges need to be able to think outside the box in creating curriculums that work within their parameters to allow them to continue providing the resource and the class. But it also goes into general education and business, right? Cannabis is a difficult business within itself, but we need to understand it is a business. We spoke about Safe Banking Act. HR 1996 was accepted and then shot down in the House, right? We have 280E, which is a very restrictive tax code that people need to understand. And then just in general, there are multiple industries within cannabis. We're always thinking about cultivation and retail, but there's a full spectrum in between. And as long as colleges and these federal prescribed institutions are working with grassroots companies out there. Now, there is a cannabis local 338, that provides services in getting unions into dispensaries and making sure that the employees are unionized. So there are organizations out there that can work with the colleges in making sure that it is fully equitable and truly equitable. I go back to a statement that I made before, you know, when I first had come out of prison in my second state term, I wanted to go to college. And because I had a nonviolent drug conviction, I was not allowed to get any sort of financial aid, which discouraged me from continuing my education. And what happened? Recidivism. I ended up back into prison. So we need to break out of these boundaries. And if we all stand on the same level, we need to be able to fight for these rights also, because closed mouths don't get fed. And we all have these ideas and we know what's ethically correct and what's ethically not correct, but we need to stand up and make statements also. So I say for the colleges and the programs, if you're creating, because we have those constraints and those restrictions now, when you're creating your curriculums, think outside of the box.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Then I wanted to ask Donna, because you're in the schools, how do you plan and you want to see other colleges do this workforce development thing?
Well, first I'll say that, you know, the City University of New York is made up of about 25 colleges. You know, and CUNY is poised to grow and sustain a talent hub for New York City employers in this fast growing industry. You know, the mayor's office stated that, you know, New York City is slated to experience 24,000 positions in the next 3 years. Having said all of that, we know that, you know, BMCC and Lehman, you know, we were awarded the monies from this New York State. And we are in the position to provide workforce development training and support to business development. You know, and having said that, I started off my conversation, you know, I was a bit long-winded as I was trying to go through some of the course content that we subscribe to provide. But rest assured, the curriculums that we are developing will be developed by subject experts with the input of industry advisory board members, such as yourself, Tanya. I don't see you on the screen here. However, we'll also be having, you know, individuals from OCM, you know, CUNY, Cannabis NYC, other CUNY members, faculty members, individuals that are out there in the field, let's say cannabis subject experts, those who already have dispensaries, those are in the culinary areas, those are in other sectors, as I mentioned before, as it relates to auxiliary areas and accounting. In some of the areas that I touched was, you know, the legal area, marketing, advertising, specifically technology, because we know technology is definitely going to lead this industry as we try to legitimize just how the product is going to be inclusive of, you know, economic development. And we know technology is a base around that, knowing that the product is medicinal, healthcare, pharmaceutical aspects will be also touched at a great deal as it relates to just workforce development in my area being, you know, career readiness. And it's very important that we develop a curriculum that is very sound in customer service, conflict resolution, you know, areas such as self-branding, because we're in a position to empower our students that come to us. We want them to be able to have transferable skills, have various skills that industry and HR, you know, are recognized, so that one will also have badges that can be on LinkedIn and from Credly. So it's really incorporating individuals into that standardized industry sector, making sure that one has the skill competencies. If we're talking about manufacturing, we're talking about the knowledge of, you know, cannabis extract and all those other skill sets that are required for that position. If we're talking about dispensary technician, it's also about, you know, being able to operate and manage the retail aspect of things. All of these skill sets that come along with. From the advanced security training that we are going to be offering. It's to really understand the security principles and the regulations that is associated with cannabis. You know, so each area will have their specialty, understanding what the regulations are, having to have some knowledge base as it relates to that. And we will also be teaching security and safety and wellness, health and wellness, from the premise of validating the product. So individuals that are coming into the class, they understand that this is a product that is respected, well received. There's principles and concepts that one must adhere to and understand. So we're really embracing it from that level. And from a career trajectory perspective, we're empowering individuals with career maps so that one can see what an entry-level position is, what one can see, climbing that, trajectory, what a manager's position looks like. I spoke about the SOC, the codes for occupations in terms of having those standardized so that one will know what the job description is. We'll know what the salary range is. So as Esther spoke about, individuals in various jobs and not knowing what their salary is, or an employer not knowing the right salary to issue an individual. Once the SOC is standardized as it relates to the cannabis industry, it's already there. One can go on the internet. It's something that is standardized in the Department of Labor. So one understands what the position in cannabis is, what the entry-level job is, what the medium-level job is, what a senior-level job is, and there is standardizations attached to it. So that's the way that I look at it. The community colleges, senior colleges in New York, we're in a space where we can help legitimize the notion of cannabis, help reshaping it as it relates to the validity of facts, research, data, information, so that society can embrace it. Things coming from the academia world tends to be embraced more officially. So we are really helping to brand and reshape the industry from our standpoint. And I think we are poised to do so, and we're prepared to do so.
I'm excited for that. I'm really excited for that. Before I go to Patrice, one of the things that I loved that you mentioned was talking about technology. I work with some ERGs, employee resource groups at Leafly and Weed Map, specifically for women in technology. And it's so wonderful to see that that's a conversation. Cybersecurity is something that we're really going to have conversations about. When Jeremy mentioned 280E, like my skin crawls a little bit, but we have 2 women-led accounting firms that are teaching cannabis bookkeeping. So I hope to see some of that in the college and agency infrastructure as well. There's so many avenues to enter this space. I've always been on the ancillary line. I think that will thrive equally, if not maybe a little more than the plant touching industry, just because you have so much less regulations. But listen, if let's just do all of the things. Let's do all of the things. I wanted to just wrap up with Patrice. How do you feel that colleges and agencies can aid in workforce development?
Almost forgot to unmute myself. So as always, everyone has shared so many amazing things. So I'll try my best to keep it brief. I just want to echo definitely we need both, particularly in New York City, we need our city agencies and our academic institutions to lean in with workforce development and to the best of their ability to go beyond that to actually support with job placement and also support with leadership opportunities. And just my experience in doing policy development and working and building out programs across the country that are supposed to cater to folks who may not have as much access and resources, it's so important that at the start, and we are really at the start, that we're taking advantage of creating these leadership opportunities for folks. I really want to see cannabis focused initiatives in relevant city agencies. I think that there are so many, and this has already been said, there are so many agencies that are relevant to the cannabis industry that is not even directly connected to being touch planting. And it's so important that we're maximizing the resources that already exist. I want to see more advocacy and more folks understanding that we have a lot of strong allies in City Council right now in terms of cannabis. I just want to uplift the group of Bronx City Council members that passed legislation that allowed New York City Small Business Services to launch Cannabis NYC. We have a lot of folks who are powerfully doing the work on a political level to actually make sure that we have what we need. And I want to see institutions, like I said, like CUNY leading these spaces. I'm a CUNY grad. Like for me, I've been a part of private institutions. I'm actually a grad from Fordham University here in the Bronx, and the value that I've gotten from my public education is priceless. So I really want to see that. And specifically, I also want to see these programs go beyond traditional application requirements. And I just want to uplift what Jeremy has said in terms of folks who have been directly impacted and what does it mean to actually have access to this. There are going to be folks who've been directly impacted and may not necessarily want to get a license or not get a license right now, and still making sure that these programs that should be opportunities don't become barriers. So as much as there is room and still being federally compliant, to just make sure that we have that. And then also the other thing that I wanted to add that I really want to see is also creativity in programming and understanding there are going to be so many ancillary services connected to the cannabis industry, and how we are able to create space for those folks to actually get what they need in terms of workforce development as well, and position them in a space to think about if they want to enter into leadership or employer roles beyond that. So I would say in a nutshell, that is the things that I would like to see.
Thank you. I see hands raised. Donna, Esta, did you want to chime in?
I just wanted to add, Patrice, I was remiss that I did not say job placement assistance. Because
no, you did. You did.
Okay, that's a big part of our support, as well as case management. Okay, yes. And we are devoted to doing grassroots work, and we will be out in the communities recruiting individuals, and we'll also be having information sessions so that individuals know what is being offered in our training programs and what we can do to help individuals, as well as refer individuals to other projects that can help uplift them.
That's actually that's fantastic, because in reality, we do have to bring this information into communities. How else will they know what's going on, and it would be awful to have someone just not know, and all of this is happening around them. Esta, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, on a couple of things. One, I'll follow up on what you just said, and then I want to really bounce back to something that Jeremy said that I thought we should talk about as well. And one is, so for example, one of the things we're doing is we have street teams going into the community to talk to people in the community about cannabis, about what recreational cannabis is all about, what does it mean, and what are the opportunities for education in this area, whether it's the program that we have on Zoom or it's the program we're doing with Lehman and CUNY on the concourse, so that it can't just be on television. The newspapers are not enough. Social media is not enough. People have to be met where they are at this moment. And so we're putting a lot of emphasis. So we're doing it actually for the CUNY on the concourse program that we're running together with Lehman and BMCC. We're having street teams come out to talk about it so that people know that this opportunity exists. The other thing I just wanted to mention about MRTA, which we haven't mentioned, but really goes right to what Jeremy said a few minutes ago about having been involved in the criminal legal system, and that is expungement. And that's a really important part. It may not be thought of as a workforce development issue, but to me it is, because if people can't get a job because of a criminal record, whether it is in the cannabis industry or someplace else, or can't go to college, Jeremy, which is what you talked about. And so what MRTA did was it expunged a certain level of cannabis convictions. And so, yes, so the rap sheet will now have it as expunged, and it'll say expunged. It doesn't like disappear, but it will say expunged, but you don't know if your record has been expunged. You have to go to the court where you pled and ask the clerk for a certificate of disposition and pay like $10. But that's an important piece here for workforce development, because you need to know that in many of the other ancillary industries we've been talking about, and everybody's right, there are many ancillary industries that we're going to see, from accounting, to manufacturing the boxes that are put in, the product is put into. So people need to know that their record has been expunged, but there's also a certain class of records which were not expunged. And so you have to go to the court and make a motion. And that's something that'll needs to be addressed, because it seems to me all of those convictions should be expunged. And one other thing, and that is that New York City has the best ban the box law in the state and in the country. Now, I would like, in fact, all those records to be gone. We tried to get there through the state legislature. It didn't happen, but at least people need to know in all of the ancillary industries we're talking about, as well as when you apply to go to college, that in fact, that box is illegal to have on an employment application. And you cannot be asked about a criminal record until you have a conditional offer of employment. So if we're really going to talk about workforce development, we want to include everybody, those people who've been involved in the criminal legal system and have their record expunged as well. And so that's another piece of MRTA that I don't think gets talked about enough. So thank you for letting me go on a little bit about it, but I just think that it's an important issue that really goes hand in hand with workforce development.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jeremy, you wanted to chime in?
Yes, I want to just backing up what Esta said. I know my lawyer, Wei, who does pro bono expungement from MRTA law. Also, Jeffrey Hoffman from Hoffman Associates picks up pro bono expungement. So that's an amazing thing. They are getting fought in, I believe it's like the 3rd or 4th Circuit. They're having a little kickback, but people need to keep on pushing for these expungements. One thing I do want to point out with workforce development, we also can't put the carriage before the horse. To have workforce development, we have to have a stable economy in the business. We have to be able to support our Black, brown, and woman-owned dispensaries that are coming up. I know somebody had mentioned before the amount that are open in New York City. I believe we're at 3, with 2 of them being not-for-profits, only one of them being Justice Involved, which came from the Bronx Cannabis Hub, which does amazing work. Desmond Lewis and his team are amazing people. But we need to make sure that we're hitting the streets and we're supporting these businesses. And also for people who push the agenda on cannabis, we need to go in our sessions with our friends, whether we're going to the salon or we're going to a wine and cheese eating. We need to keep on pushing the agenda and making sure that it's getting brought to more people, so that when these subjects are brought up, there isn't that little step back. Because regardless of what we believe, there still is a stigma about cannabis, and there still is a stigma about opening dispensaries in our neighborhoods. And until we can get a controlled lock on these illegal dispensaries and start opening up legal ones and getting this support in the businesses, we can't really have workforce development, because we don't have any place to put them. So I always want to make sure that we support our Black, brown, and women-owned dispensaries that are coming up. As a New York Rican, less than 7% of all dispensaries are owned by Hispanics, less than 3 African Americans, and women-owned are less than that. So if we want this industry to thrive, we need to be able to support them.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so we are done with our questioning, and I did just want to, when I find this Q&A, just touch on the questions that were asked, even though they were answered, they weren't answered publicly, and then I think we can close up the night. We get a lot of information, and everyone is going to get the replay for this segment, and expect more in the future. So someone had asked that they had mentioned they were excited for all the workforce programs, but they would love a class about managing staff or human resources in that sector. I think we're going to have a lot of folks transitioning from regular, non-cannabis human resources into human resources. I know a few already. That's going to be fantastic. And I see that Jane mentioned that is something that they are developing as they speak. Is that anyone else want to chime in on that? Human resource professionals in the space?
So that's phase 2 of CWI. So that is actually, I have somebody writing a manual on collective bargaining and labor relations in the cannabis space. Jeremy, thank you for mentioning RWDSU 338. Also an HR manual. An HR manual is required. So what do you put in an HR manual? And so we will be using the resources of the ILR school and the HR department that we have to really put out a manual for people who are going to need to write one for themselves. There's an affirmative action requirement here. People don't understand what affirmative action means. And so we want to do education on what does affirmative action mean. And it is not about giving up merit. It's about opening the door. And so that's conflict resolution. We have the Scheinman Institute on conflict resolution. We'll be putting together those programs. So that'll be on the next sort of set. We'll continue to do the ones we're doing, but then we're going to keep adding in terms of what we see the employer-employee relationship needs to go forward and to be successful. So yeah, so that's coming. I promise you, Tanya, I promise.
Okay. One great cannabis course that I saw pop up, it's way upstate New York, I think like close to Buffalo. There's actually a university doing culinary arts with cannabis, edible production.
Yes.
So I'm all about that course. Let's bring it downstate, And the last question was, how do you get involved in workforce development programs? And I would ask Jane and Esta to tell people how to find you.
I was going
to say, let's start with Jane.
Okay. I'm going to ask Donna to talk about the startup of the BMCC program, because that is real workforce development. What we're doing at Lehman is more about helping businesses to get going. And that's the part of the grant that we are working on at Lehman and that is being rolled out even as we speak. Donna, why don't you talk about the training programs that you've got and when they're going to start?
Well, absolutely. Our training programs are earmarked to start the latter part of spring. And when we say that, we typically are looking at May, June months. We're currently developing our curriculum with cannabis subject experts. We want to make sure that the curriculum is robust and it speaks to the content and the areas that I mentioned here on this platform. We will be having information sessions. Individuals interested in being a part of our information sessions, I can put in the chat our website address. One can go to Continuing Education at BMCC and you will see the Cannabis Project. When you go to that website, you can just read upon the description and put your name on that waiting list. It's absolutely, so we are excited and we're ready to begin trainings. We have our advisory board that is prepared to lead us and to help us along the way. This is a growing industry. We know that there's going to be changes as we go along, and we will adapt to any governance that arises and ensure that we empower our participants to be informed with the standards and the regulations that are occurring. in addition to the specialized skill competency trainings that will be required for what we know to be needed in the areas of question. Not to mention that we will be offering additional trainings based upon the need. So as we acquire, additional funding, we will be venturing out into other areas. We focused on those 3 areas because we knew that the licensing for dispensaries were going to be the first ones out. So we wanted to be able to prepare a talent pipeline for those card holders that will have dispensaries and needing capital manpower. So this is the positioning that we've taken. The question before pertained to other continuing education courses, and I raised my hand because I know that in continuing education, in community colleges, we are in a position to open our doors for innovative courses. So I can expect, a ton load of proposals to be able to develop courses for our audiences as it relates to the need to know about. So we're in an intricate space to accept proposals for these various courses. And we know as the regulations are in existence, people need to know more about how to be in compliance. So we're in that position to offer these courses as we develop our positioning in the cannabis world.
Thank you so much. And how does someone access the CWI program, Esta?
Okay, so cannabisworkforceinitiative.org. If you go to our website, you will find many videos that we've done to just introduce you to the field, and all the videos for our 10-week program. Now we're just on week 8, and so we have 9 and 10 coming up, and then we're going to start again. And so if you go to cannabisworkforceinitiative.org, you can find out when we'll be starting that program again on Zoom. And as I said before, we're doing it live starting in April with CUNY on the concourse. So anybody who is able to come to the classes at CUNY on the concourse, please join us in that. And that will be a live class as well. And so we're just going to keep rolling it out. And if you go to the website, you'll always be able to see when the next full group is going to be offered. And all of our programming is free. We are sponsored by the New York State Legislature. And so we do not charge for any of the programming, any of the educational programs that we do. So it just is really to move this industry forward so that there really is the promise of MRTA is realized. We've made a lot of promises in legislation over the years in the city and in the state and in this country. We want to see that this promise is really kept. So, and we're pleased that the state legislature is funding us to be able to do that.
Thank you. So if everyone is good, anyone else want to chime in with anything other than that? I think we're done. I want to thank Samira, did you want to say something?
Yeah. Yes, first of all, I put the link in our to our website where the training will be posted there shortly, the April training that Esta just covered. Also, Jane would have her closing remarks, and also we have a small survey for the participants to share.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. Jane, you could.
Yes, so I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's been involved in this event this evening. I want to thank our co-sponsor, Patrice Edwards from the Cannabis Hub. This is the first of many, I truly hope, and so that we'll be working together. That will be terrific. I want to thank the panelists for just incredibly insightful, thoughtful, provocative thought leadership in this area. It's been terrific. Tanya, I think you should become a musician because you are an orchestra conductor. You are kept us all on track and you did a fabulous job. I want to thank the people behind the scenes, Martha, Alex, and Samira, who's the director at CUNY on the concourse. And it's been just a terrific evening. It's been so instructive and I thank you all. And we would like to get your feedback. We want to know what you as the participants in the panel discussion and who've been attending what you think about what we've been doing. What did you find useful, and what would you like to know more about? We do have a question. Tanya, did you see? Go ahead.
I did. It says, when do you think we'll have cultivation in New York City? I'll ask Jeremy to chime in. I know we don't have official regulations yet, but do you have a timeline?
So regulations are still in comment period. You're allowed to grow a certain amount of plants right now in your house without it being criminal. The next big license that'll come out after CAURD would be the micro business license, which is going to allow you to grow and then create your own dispensary, do everything in between. We've honestly, the participants in CAURD, we thought this would have rolled out a lot sooner than it did. So I'm anticipating everything to Q3, Q2, hopefully of 24. You know, everything full rollout, and then we'll have a decent amount of dispensaries open, get regulations finalized, and allow home cultivation.
Because right now we have conditional cultivators.
Processors and
Conditional processors. Right.
So I agree with Jeremy. I didn't think it was going to happen sooner, but I definitely think that the timeline is definitely early next year.
Yeah.
You know, so support what we've got. You know, we're going to continue to have more dispensaries open up.
Support our local businesses. Don't go to the corner stores and support the illegal.
Do not go to the corner store.
They're posing our communities, you know. Let us get a good grasp on making sure that the product is something that New Yorkers are going to want. That's also a big thing. But still, support your local dispensaries that are coming and opening, your legal, justice involved dispensaries.
And I am a big proponent for the medical program. I've been in a caregiver for New York State Medical since we started. If you can't access a New York State legal adult use dispensary, shop medical. If you are eligible to shop in the medical program, there's a lot of changes happening in our medical program starting the 20th. Really exciting changes to the medical program. So stay tuned. Follow everyone here so you can get all that information. But if you can't shop legal AU, shop medical.
Yes.
So Tanya, just to add to what you and Jeremy just said, to know that you have a product with is clean, it doesn't have fungus, and that it hasn't been laced with anything that could hurt you. That's what the legal market is all about.
100%.
And so that's why you want to shop in a store that has the OCM seal of approval, as opposed to somebody down the corner, because at least you know you're getting a safe product and a good product. The other thing that our audience might just maybe people don't know is that there are 9 different licenses, and that's taking time too, because there are so many licenses. And what's the point of the licenses? It's so that you don't have a vertical business that has everything within it, which means only big corporations can have enough capital to start a business that has cultivation, manufacture, processing, distribution, sale, etc. What the act wanted to have was small businesses that were diverse. And so the licensing follows that in terms of having many different licenses, but that also takes a long time, because all the regulations for each license has to be worked through, and there's always public comment. And the public comment we just finished, once they issue new regulations, sorry, getting tired, there'll be another 45-day comment period. And so while that seems laborious, it means that your voice is heard. And so that's really important, and hopefully it's to get it right.
I'll give that to the OCM then, though. All the comments that we as the CAURD Coalition have pushed forward, they've read, they've answered, they've been nothing but hospitable when it comes to events and supporting. You know, there's no fraternizing between OCM and sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Licensees, applicants, I should say, sorry, but they've been nothing but great. And when it comes back into the tiers of what they have, they're collapsible. So we have cultivation, marketing, and processing. We also have retail, on-site consumption, and delivery. So those 1 licenses fall into a collapsible tier, which you'll be able to utilize all 3. We thought at one point they'd all be separate, but on an on-site dispensary, you're allowed on-site consumption and delivery, which is cool. So you can lock that down, have its own vertical integration, you know, it's pretty cool. I think micro businesses is going to be the really big license there.
Yeah.
For those of us out there who have the legacy growing in our background, that's going to be awesome. You know, you'll be limited to lights and the amount that you can produce, but you'll be able to sustain yourself. And I think micro businesses is going to be the boom.
And you could find all the information. You could find the regs there. Like Esta said, the comment period is closed. Please do go to the Office of Cannabis Management's they do have a YouTube channel now. I just was on it the other day. Their website where you can download the regs, you can look them over. On the Cannadivas YouTube channel, we did 4 days, 8 hours of going through the regulations. It's still up there if you want to just kind of see us really high level going over them. Cannabis NYC did some workshops where they went over the regulations. They're still available for you to go look at them. So if you're curious and want someone to kind of break them down, it's 283 pages, people. Like no one really wants to read that, but you will have to if you're going to apply. Don't not, but they are available for you to take a look at, Thank you so much, everyone. This has been really wonderful. The comments have been great. You all have been wonderful. Jane, do you want to close us out?
Just to add my voice to yours and say thank you, everybody, for a terrific evening, informative and really very, very stimulating. Thank you.